Okay, so now this is Christina. And Christina is testing out as secure now. But she started out as anxious. And then she went through a personal evolution through the 12-step program Al-Anon and Alan Robarge's attachment trauma online community. Mm-hmm. So she steeped herself in this information and obviously has relationships with people in the online community. And sometimes it is just a matter of education. Of course, it's practice too. But first you have to know. So when you can see, then you can begin that process. So now let's look at her chart to see what her challenges she has started with and what she's worked through to now testing out as secure.
Well, it's nice to have a secure chart to look at too and see how that differs. Right away I can see several planets in great dignity, right? So we've got Jupiter in Sagittarius, we have Venus exalted in Pisces, we have the Sun exalted in Aries, and the Moon in its Mula-Tricone in Taurus there. So we've got a lot of really well-dignified planets in this chart. Even Capricorn exalted in Mars, Capricorn's exalting Mars. It's
wow.
Almost every single one of her planets. I mean, Saturn's in a really good friend sign, and Mercury's still in a friend sign. Mercury's probably not super. Mercury would still be considered combust, but it's pretty far away from that sun, so it's not in full force combustion. I mean, there's a lot of really nice things that are going on in this chart. The one thing that there's two things. We've got the Moon conjunct Saturn. And we have Rahu in the 8th house again.
Yeah.
So those are the two things that may have lent themselves to her feeling more of an anxious, right?
Yeah, right, and avoidant. I would say especially Rahu in the 8th house can really, it's a separating factor. Mm-hmm. And the 8th house is the second from the 7th, right? So it has to do with your bond with another person. Yeah. And so this is not an easy thing. But wherever Rahu is, that's where you're going to, that's the direction you're moving into. So again, another very self-sufficient person who really has learned through previous lifetimes how to take care of themselves. And they come in quite very accomplished and skilled. Moving over to, okay, now it's time for you to be vulnerable and let yourself depend on someone else and see their resources as an extension of yours, where she's probably a person who prefers to make her own money. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, definitely. It's funny, my daughter has K2 in her 2nd house, and I think the day she got her driver's license, she got a job.
Wow.
She's so excited about that freedom to be able. And the Rahu in the 8th house can come in the sense of learning more of these 8th house type things. So something like learning astrology, something like deeper levels of meditation. Also, going deeply into that 8th house realm of our inner security, our inner psychology. And you can see how groups would be good for her.
Yeah.
You can see the Moon in Mula-Tricone in the 11th Bhava, in the 11th house, and then you can also see the 11th house cusp has her Sun exalted on it, and the 11th house cusp Lord is exalted in the 7th. So there's an aspect to that of benefits from groups. And
there is something here, though. Sorry, I interrupted you. Were you finished?
No, you're fine.
I hate it when I do.
The Puja dosha?
Well, Mars in the 7th.
Yeah.
That's tough because Mars is celibate, and here he is in the house of sex and partnership. Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to find out a bit more about her relationship history. Mm-hmm. Also, there, Mars, the soldier planet, the warrior planet, in a relationship house. You know what I've seen? I've seen something very interesting. I don't know if you've noticed this too, but I've noticed that a lot of Mars Atmakarika people, or people who have Mars very prominent like this, tend to get together with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like women who are married to cops. They tend to have a strong Mars too, because Mars rules police.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're both like soldiers together, military wives, right? They too have Mars prominent.
That's a good way to use it. That's a good way to use that. Mars in the 7th house. And the Kuja dosha, the traditional what you'd look for with the Kuja dosha is someone else who has a Kuja dosha. So someone else who has a strong Mars, someone else who's having Mars in one of those places.
Yeah.
The other thing that Mars in the 7th house can do is bring in partners, like you said, that are more Marsy. So if they're not a cop or a fireman or someone who's necessarily using that Mars energy can come out in the relationship. They can attract people that are more Mars oriented. And so learning things like how to hear what they're saying, how to communicate, how to avoid things escalating into a Mars type of argument, but how to actually address problems. That seems, I have Mars in my 7th house, so I understand the progression of this. And it's been a progression because I've moved from having, more argumentative partners to partners who are more interested in working on things, more interested in working on the, how to overcome obstacles, how to fix things.
Right. Well, look at this good fortune she's got here too, which will help this a lot. The Dara Karaka, the spouse producer planet, Venus, exalted in Pisces. How wonderful is that?
It's nice. That's nice.
So that's an interesting combination. So I wonder if she attracts like really good looking guys. This is very fascinating because firemen, they have to have Mars, of course, because they're doing really hard work, but they always have Venus also quite prominent. And that combination creates such good-looking guys. Have you noticed that?
I have. I have noticed that several times.
Yeah, and men who drive ambulances, right? It's that high-stress adrenaline kind of a job, yet they're healers. So that combination, I would love to find out if the men in her life tend to be good-looking guys. I bet you they are.
Right. You can see some delays too, though, because we've got Capricorn as the 7th house lord. So a lot of times when you have people that have a Cancer or a Leo ascendant, there can be delays just by the nature of that Saturn ruling their 7th house.
Right.
And while we have Saturn up there in Taurus, which Saturn loves Venus and it loves being in Venus's sign, that's a pretty strong moon. And look at the degrees that moon and Saturn, they're not even 10 minutes apart, right?
Yes.
They're right on top of each other. So there's an element to this around her partnerships that could have delays, or there could be some emotional challenges to work through.
She's Cancer ascendant. Yeah. The Cancer ascendant, the moon, is the ruler of the chart. So the mindset, the attitude, the emotional part of this person's life is paramount. It's very important. And she's taking care of it. She's being responsible, and she's taking care of it. And look, though, this is a theme. See, here it is again. The Mercury is her Atmakarika. So here it is, and it's aspecting Moon Saturn. Again, and over here in the Sapsamsha, Moon Saturn. So what would you say about that? There's some kind of ancestral thing going on there, right?
In the Saptamsha? Well, I like to look at
that repeating like this, that repeating in all these three parts.
Well, you definitely use the rule of threes, because we are looking at the Varga charts. We're looking at the Rashi chart. We're not even looking at the Padas and the Upapada. We're not even going into the Jaimini techniques to see, all of those details too. But when you see something repeating itself, pay attention to that. That's shining a light on that Moon-Saturn conjunction that's important for her, that she's going to be working through that. But you know, in the Rashi chart, you can see the 11th house. It's all happening in the 11th house. So even with the 12th house cusp, it's still the 11th house, which is an upachaya house. It grows. It gets better over time, especially when her ascendant lord is better.
Yeah, yeah. And look, it's aspecting its own house of Cancer and the 4th house of inner emotional happiness. So that really helps. And she's addressed this because when you have Saturn Moon together, it indicates the need for emotional healing of some kind. And that's what she's been doing. So, of course, I become curious about what Saturn is. Who is Saturn producing in her life? And
Right.
It's her friends.
Yeah, it's her friends and her advisors and people around her that support her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so you can see she's got, I do want to say one thing though, that even if your planets are not all highly dignified like this, it doesn't mean that you cannot experience the same progression of growth. And in fact, having all your planets dignified like this has its own challenges, believe it or not.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Even though the planets are all in really good challenges, I think that this person also had some challenges earlier on in their relationship experiences that were just as painful.
Exactly. So in case you're suffering from chart envy, which you're prone to if you study astrology at all, after a while you see, it doesn't really, everybody has their own issues. So that's Christina. Now Christine. And she is someone who also started out anxious and then went to avoid it. So she did that kind of flip-flop thing. Mm-hmm. But through her studying psychology, she has a master's in psychology, and self-analysis and self-development, she now tests as secure. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I don't know much about her because she's not a client of mine. So
right.
I can't really give you much detail about her relationships or anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you start again. Unless you want me to, I'll do it this time if you want.
It's fun. I mean, you can see her ascendant lord is Saturn, right? And it's her Atmakaraka, and then it's really challenged in the sign of Aries there. So this person, because that Saturn has some challenges to it, the things that are really hard in life are going to feel even harder. That Saturn is going, when I see a debilitated planet, the way that I look at it is that we're working on that planet to bring it up. It's not that we're stuck with this debilitated planet, but that planet is going to be the planet that we beat our head against the wall with enough times until we go, what in the world do I need to do to work on this? So this person, you can see, is going to be working on strengthening that Saturn, her courage.
Right. Well, it's being delighted by Venus, though.
It is. It's being delighted by Venus.
Helping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is being delighted by Venus. So anything helps when Saturn's, having a challenge, that Venus can help it. It's also on an angle from the moon. So we can see that moon might be impacting it. It's in the 10th house from the moon. So that moon might be giving it, if we look down, we can see what is the moon's aspecting Saturn 15 points out of 60 points. So that's not a ton. We've got Jupiter helping it, but Jupiter's sort of a neutral to Saturn.
Not quite that very strong.
Yeah. Well, it's when we look at because all we've got here is the table of aspected planets. I'm not looking at the avastas because we don't have the avastas screen. Okay. So we can just kind of see just from that aspect. Yeah, we could.
The avastas. You want the avastas calculated?
Sure.
Okay. Here we go.
Yeah. All right, cool. So yeah, we can see how much Mars is impacting Saturn, being on 5 and 9 from Saturn. We can see that Mars. Yeah, and we can see Mars is impacted because Saturn's in Mars's sign. And that's how much that Saturn is getting impacted by being in the sign of Mars. So that can be frustrating. You know, when Saturn gets really impacted strongly by Mars, we tend to put our energy into things that can be frustrating.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Because Saturn hates being in Mars's signs. He feels rushed and and pushed. He likes to take things slow and to be cautious and thorough. And developing a long-term focus here too is a challenge, so that you don't get, trying to do too many different things at one time, or just before success, quitting. Quitting just before you get there. That too can cause a lot of frustration. So, but then here's the moon. Now the moon is in its own sign. It's in Cancer. It loves to be in that sign. It's in a house though that it doesn't like to be in so much. But the good thing about it is that it does aspect the ascendant. And when the moon aspects the ascendant, that is an asset in relationships. Because what men look for is they look for the expressions that we have on our face, our true feelings showing in our eyes. And the moon aspecting the ascendant gives you maybe larger eyes and the ability to show what you're really feeling, your true feelings. Of course, with this, you have to be careful that you're not actually showing the secondary, or then the feeling after that, right? Hiding the vulnerability and going to defense, going to protest behavior, going to anger is basically what that means.
Yeah.
So, but it's such a nurturing moon. Look at that. And push ya.
It gets better. It's growing, and we can see this moon is a waxing moon. You know, it's going to bring more, and this is partly what's lending this person into a healing profession, right? That they're a counselor, right? That moon is growing, and it's in the 6th house. It's not their Almakaraka. We've got Saturn as the Almakaraka.
But look, it's with Venus, the healer planet. Yeah, an aspect of the ascendant.
Yep.
So I wonder if she is in a healing career.
Yeah, it's that 6th house is very strong for her, and she's going to go into a moon dasha. So she's in the sun dasha right now. So we see the sun as the 7th house lord. You know, the sun is kind of in an enemy's dignity, right? Or it's a neutral dignity here, but it doesn't like being in Venus's sign.
No, but it is helped by Mercury.
It's helped by Mercury, and it's also helped by that moon.
Yeah, by the moon. So that's really nice.
And so this person was identifying as more secure now in their life after having studied and taken a lot of classes in psychology.
And self-development, self-analysis. Yes. So now she's testing out secure. I don't know if she's in a relationship or not, but she's certainly in the time period that would bring a relationship into her life. And the sun-moon time period in particular is really, even though it's in the 6th, she might meet somebody who's actually in the healing profession too, just because the moon is in the 6th and she's in the sun-moon time period and it's aspecting the sun.
I love that about our charts, is that when we go into different periods and we meet people, it can bring in different types of people.
Yeah.
In the charts, it's really interesting.
The Darakaraka is the sun too. Look at that.
Yeah.
So she's definitely in a love period. Wow.
Yeah.
And let me see. Oh, look at this. The 9th cusp in the marriage chart is ruled by the moon. Now the moon being here in the 6th can be, cause some delay, or you may have to overcome some obstacles, just things that get in the way. But it's worth it. It's worth the fight. It's worth, getting through those things, because she's in a real strong love time period right now.
Yep, she is, and then she's going to go into Sun Mars, and Mars rules the 7th in the Navamsha, so there's another relationship aspect that could be happening. Sun's in the sign of Venus, which is a relationship-based sign. So the Sun-Venus aspect. And so she's going into parts of her dasha, of her sun dasha, that speak more to the positivity in relationship.
Absolutely.
And the sun gets helped by the moon because the moon's a friend, and the sun gets helped by Mars because Mars is a friend to the sun.
Right.
And the sun gets helped by Jupiter too. So those are things that are going to boost that sun's manifesting up.
Yes. Now I do want to address this, the Rahu-Ketu axis here.
Yeah. Opposite of the other two charts we just looked at.
Yeah. So you want to start with that because this is important, so important for a relationship.
Well, yeah, I mean, the person is opposite of what we were talking about. So that independent, wanting to just go strike it out and be very self-sufficient is something more that they're developing in this lifetime. And so that Rahu in the second house can also be talking about development of self-worth, the really core work that we're doing on how we value ourselves. And a lot of times that comes through maturity and age, and it comes through working, getting out there and working on ourselves, working on the career. Those types of things can help lend themselves to that. But the really strong meaning of the second house has a lot to do with our core values and our self-worth.
Right. And sometimes, here's the thing, if you have K2 here in the 8th, which is second from the 7th, if you make your partner the center of your world and you don't develop your own dharma, your own skills and talents and abilities and whatnot, K2 will kick you out. He'll kick you out of your relationship because Rahu is where you need to go. So a big part of what you're doing this lifetime is developing your own resources. You won't actually be able to entirely depend on your partner. I had one of the things I do is I do psychic fairs because they're fun. And I had a woman come to me, and she wanted to know if she made a big mistake leaving her husband. So I looked at her birth chart, and she had K2 in the 8th. And when she left was during her K2 time period. And I told her what this was about, that I asked her, I said, was he the center of your whole world? And she said, yes. And I said, did you not, develop your own skills and talents and abilities? And she goes, yeah, no, I didn't. It was just kind of cozy. I just was the wife and I was happy with that. And I said, well, you were, K2 kid kind of kicked you out of that cozy nest because you need to do this. And she was so relieved because it had been torturing her. Yeah. She was wondering, did I make a terrible mistake? But one day she said she just knew she had to go.
Yeah.
So if you have anything like this, that story in your background, that's what was going on.
And that if you have K2 and Rahu in the second and 8th house, it's not going to always present itself like that.
Not at all. It's how you handle it.
Yeah, and we can see that the ruler of her Rahu is Jupiter and is there with K2 in the 8th house. So there is still an aspect to her receiving in this lifetime. It's not going to pushing her out because we've got this shared connection between Rahu and K2.
Right, exactly. And Jupiter's aspecting its own sign here too.
Yeah.
And helping. And
yeah.
all I'm telling you, the only reason I'm mentioning this story is not to scare you, but to tell you what it's about and why even in relationship you can receive. Of course, you have to in order for it to be a good relationship. Mm-hmm. There has to be an equal exchange of energy. However, you can't just decide that everything in your life is all about your partner because it just won't work. That's all. And I'm wondering if, because she's testing secure now, it sounds like maybe she's worked her way through a lot of this and she is able to do that, back and forth, able to depend on a partner and the partner depend on her and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that the reason for her pushing for that security without maybe even knowing what the attachment style was, but it's that Rahu in the second house. That is about finding our inner security. That is about finding what the secure attachment style.
Exactly.
So she's been working through this, and she's gone through her Rahu maturation age.
Right. Right.
So it would be interesting to see how these attachment styles line up with our Rahu Ketu maturation age when we move through in finding our own secure attachment. It could have to do with that Rahu maturing.
It certainly helps, doesn't it? Especially, yeah. Okay. Okay, so now we have one more. We can move on to the next one. Okay, so this is the last one that we have for today. But before that, I want to say if you are enjoying this, if you would like to learn more about astrology, then please hit the like and the subscribe button, and you'll get notifications of whenever a video comes out. Okay, now this person, she is now testing as secure. Yeah, her name is Ronnie, and she is testing as secure now, but she started off, well, actually, she's never had problems with being interdependent. She's never been afraid that her partner would abandon her or leave her. She hasn't been anxious in that way. So she's pretty much always had the secure style. But the problem came up for her was that she's never wanted to have children. And you can see that here, like in the Sapsumsha, which is the children chart. Jupiter is not cooperating with creating children. He's very weak there, and it's hard for him to produce children. But her partners, here, Jupiter is her partner, her Dara Karka spouse producer planet. Look at it's exalted and retrograde, very strong, and they always want children. So her problem has been that she tends to get into relationships with men who really want children. And she's tried to, she's felt anxious about whether or not she could go along with that desire in order to keep the relationship. But it turned out ultimately that she decided that she couldn't do that. And now she spends a great deal of time at work, because this is where her, Saturn and her moon are. She spends a lot of time at work. It takes up all of her time. She's not in a relationship. But I did tell her as she gets older, the children issue becomes less and less of an issue.
Sure.
So that's all I wanted to say as an intro to that. So would you like to start it off from here?
Well, I mean, as the children thing goes, that's showing up in a lot of ways in our chart. We've got K2 in the 5th, which doesn't always do that, but sometimes K2 is going to push us away from wanting that as a security for our lives. And then she has her Putra Karaka's moon, who's just with Saturn there in the 10th house.
Okay, so we need to explain what the Putra Karaka is.
The Putra Karaka is children in the Jaimini Karaka system. So we have the moon being the Putra Karaka.
So that's the planet that produces children, is what we're trying to say.
Mm-hmm. So that there can be delays with that, or just restrictions. I mean, Saturn's sort of winning out there. Yeah.
Right. Right. So pretty much, I think that I see that as meaning that she doesn't have the desire, and she's got these things. It's like the soul is channeling her so that she doesn't spend time on that. Instead, she's channeled into the areas that she does need to spend time on in this lifetime. Because having children is incredibly time consuming.
Yeah, and we can see her Ketu is in Aries and her Rahu is in Libra. So there is a developmental aspect going on just with the Rahu Ketu axis being in Mars and Venus's signs that, she's used to being independent. Once she's used to doing things on her own, and that, part of the evolutionary process that Rahu will bring out, and she's in Rahu Dasha now, is learning how to work with other people, learning a fair exchange, learning the Libra story.
Yes, and how much things are going to cost, meaning in terms of time, energy, and money.
Yeah.
It sounds like she did weigh that out with the children thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's quite it's a path by itself, having kids.
Yeah. Yeah, she was meant to be more on the career path.
Yeah.
And a spiritual path potentially as well, because we've got, once again, her ascended Lord goes right into the 8th house, exalted. There's deeper wisdom, deeper understanding of things below the surface there.
Yeah, the occult sciences, which is probably why she's interested in astrology.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, she'd do well with that.
So let's look at the 4th. Okay, the moon likes to be in the 4th. It's aspecting the 4th. Saturn, when it's aspecting the 4th, again, is that independent thing, a person who actually enjoys their own company. They may have spent a lot of time alone growing up and learned how to make that a good thing. How to be alone and enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
So she does have somewhat of a loner personality. So Mercury here, which is Ratmakaraka, is right in the ascendant. So she probably is really great at making friends. She probably has a lot of good friends.
And when she does find a partner, they probably come to her. She doesn't have to go out searching for them too much. They're going to come to her.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I can't help but just poke into the future a little bit for this person, because you can see the north node of the moon is going to move into the sign of Gemini, right, which is her 7th house. And that doesn't happen until the middle of 2020, and it'll be in there for a year and a half.
You've memorized that?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. Okay.
Yeah, I always look at where the north and south nodes of the moon are going to be, especially when you see someone who's in a Rahu dasha or in a Ketu dasha or in a moon, in a moon dasha even, it'll impact them a little bit stronger when you see where the eclipses are going, and when you see them lining up in the 1st house and the 7th house, that usually is indicator that there could be a change. There could be a change in their status. There could be a change in the direction that she has gone in. And the Rahu energy is going to be in her 7th house. So that may pull her more into a relationship with Mercury. Rahu's going to be ruled by Mercury. Mercury goes into her 1st house. There could be some shifting going on in the next few years. Yeah, and she's gonna go into a Rahu Venus, Rahu Ketu, Rahu Venus. Yeah.
Let me see, where's Rahu Jupiter? Okay, she's already gone through Rahu Jupiter
and Rahu. Well, she's in Rahu Mercury right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
she's ruling the 7th, right?
Yeah, though she's quite busy right now.
Yeah.
Let me see. I think she is. Right, but the older she gets, though, she's less likely to meet men who are hoping to have a family.
Yeah.
It usually happens at younger ages. And they may already have children, perhaps from other relationships, but the older you get, the more likely they are to be grown up, out of the house, not something where you have to become a stepmom. I'm not sure how she feels about being a stepmom. So I can see why she's avoiding relationships altogether, because, that is a big part of love and relationship, and that is what comes from it, right? Is children. And if not children, then some other kind of creative thing.
Right. And she has, she does have Saturn impacting her seventh house lord that goes into the first house. So there's a delaying factor on it. Even though Saturn's good for Mercury, it also can still create delays. And delays can be good, that we spend time working on ourselves and accomplishing the things that we're here to do as well. Not always about getting into a relationship, but that will lend itself over time to develop, I think.
Right. It's so interesting how when you meet you have a client who says something like, I don't want children. I've never wanted children. And then their chart like totally supports that. People really are kind of they're almost all, I've never seen a chart where they're not doing their chart.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so the first chart gives you validation for who you are, what you want, what you don't want.
I think that it's this ascended Lord being exalted in the 8th house in Cancer that really lends this person towards having a more secure, attached style. Just in general, that Jupiter being exalted can go a really long way.
No kidding. Look at what they can share with her partner.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A wonderful bond.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of resources. They could do a lot together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got Jupiter exalted in the Navamsha chart too. So while it's not as good in the Saptamsha, which is the one for children, it is lending itself for a good marriage.
Yes, a good husband. Someone who doesn't go to sleep after you get married.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody spiritually oriented too, which I'm thinking is something she would really like. So I want to quickly look at her spiritual yogas. Well, it's a mix. It's not showing that is the purpose of her life, which is to develop to be like very spiritually focused. But I think she is.
Well, just wait till she hits that Jupiter Dasha, right?
Yeah.
In 2028. That would probably trigger a lot more. She might have a lot more time during that time frame to really dive in to that aspect of her interest. It might shift,
It might shift. Well, she came in with a lot of spiritual merit.
Yeah.
So, and it rules the 4th too. So inner emotional happiness.
Yeah.
It's making an aspect to it, not the Gemini aspect, but it's still making an aspect.
And so while we can see there's things that we saw similar in other people's charts, the moon and Saturn, Venus and the sun, those are two things that we've talked about showing up as adding to the potential for different types of, attachment styles. This person is identifying with pretty much a secure attached style, but she is more focused on her career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is really interesting too. She has Venus aspect in the Atmakaraka here, and it's ruled by Venus. So there's like there's a Venus emphasis here.
Mm-hmm.
Venus is happy in Capricorn. It's in the 2nd house, which is a nice place for it. It's maybe not the best house for the sun, but Venus is a nice place. The 2nd house is a nice place for Venus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that sun is getting impacted by Venus and by Saturn to a certain degree because it's in Saturn's sign.
Mm.
And that sun's ruling her 9th house.
Right.
So that could create delays to the marriage.
Yeah. What's interesting about this is, when Venus and the sun are together, there's almost always a push-pull thing between, okay, do I follow my dharma? Do I follow my inspirations? Do I do my career? Or what about my relationships? Aren't I really supposed to be doing relationship right now? Because in our society, single people get a lot of pressure.
Right.
A lot of judgment, a lot of flack, really, for being single, especially when they're younger. It's like, so what's wrong with you? How come you're not married by now? You don't have children. What's going on? that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this might actually, especially in her family, because this is a house of family,
Yeah.
Where she might be getting a lot of that and having to stay true to her own path while fending off all of that. Not easy.
Mm-hmm.
But the chart is totally supporting the path that she's on.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to say that. And the sun too, being in a Saturn sign may have doubts just on its own. But luckily, she says she's in a job that is so busy, she has so much work to do that it pretty much takes all of her time. So it's not like she has time to sit around and fret, that her family's upset because she's not married yet.
Right.
So I think we've covered everyone who has actually taken any of the quizzes, the attachment quizzes in the books or at yourspersonality.net.com. And so that helps us to see that in the chart more clearly. It's a learning thing for us too. And even if you didn't do that, you can still learn a great deal about capacity and your relationship capacity through astrology and how that can be changed, transformed through knowledge, education, and practice.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you liked this, please hit the like button, hit subscribe so you can get the next videos. We will continue this project, but not necessarily in video, this particular part of the project in video, because to do a really good research project, we do need to have more charts than what we've been working with so far. So if you want to do that and send us your information, great. We'll put it in our database, and we would really appreciate that. Well, thank you very much. This is Karen White of Divine Time Astrology. And until next time, goodbye.